What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Taking the Pin. And today we are going to be discussing the seeming takeover of WWE over TNA properly this time. Now that there are two of the big titles in TNA being held by WWE superstars. Of course, those two being the men's TNA title and the women's TNA title, with Trick Williams and Jacy Jayne holding those belts respectively. Of course, I think we've both got our own thoughts on this situation as it currently stands, and I think that's probably what we're going to get straight into right now this second. So, Bragster, take us through your thoughts on how you see things at the moment with TNA and the fact that WWE currently hold two of those titles at the moment.
I don't like the fact they hold two of them. I didn't mind it when Trick won the TNA World Championship because I thought it's a very interesting story that they can tell of, a WWE guy coming in, winning that World Championship, and then all of TNA sort of banding together, maybe even sometimes forgetting baby faces and heels and sort of just going, no, we need to save the brand. And I really like that idea. The issue is they're now doing it twice. And I feel like, number one, as a storyline perspective, that gets a bit old if you try and do the same thing twice in very short succession. And number two, I feel like they missed the trick because, pun intended, where with the women's side, they could have made Masha Slamovich be the biggest person currently in TNA, because all of a sudden, rather than it would have basically been the flip reverse. You would have had Trick come over and take over, and now this time you could have had that TNA have one of their belts. I think that would have been really interesting because then we've seen how TNA have reacted. One of which putting a triple threat match on, type of deal to try and help take that title away from Trick. But it would have been interesting to see what Shawn Michaels and NXT would have done to try and get that title back. I think they sort of missed a trick there where they could have done that. I think that obviously in the long term, as long as a TNA person beats both of them, in the long term, it probably won't have the biggest impact, right? TNA is currently at its highest that it's been in a very long time, probably since the late 2000s, early 2010s period. I feel like it's at its highest. The gate receipts at Slammiversary were extremely high for a TNA event. I think it was 7,600 and something off the top of my head, which is very, very good for TNA. Extremely good for a live event, one of their biggest events of the year. Obviously, Bound for Glory is on the way, and that's their second biggest event of the year.
Yep.
But this is their main event. This is sort of their mania, per se, for people who aren't familiar with TNA. And it felt like that sort of going into it, and I feel like it's a bit weird having your mania and your brand comes out of it not on top. And I'm not saying that in the sense of that both Jacy and Trick should have lost, because I understand why that maybe didn't happen, especially given the fact that the WWE wrestlers coming in has helped boost the viewership. So I understand why that didn't happen, but I feel like not winning either really sort of, as a fan watching it, you'll go, well, TNA are rubbish. Is sort of how it comes across, because it's not like what's happened is a WWE wrestler has the Women's Knockouts Championship and has the X Division Championship, right? Where it's a mid-card title and a world title. This is both of their world titles. This is their two biggest titles in the company gone from the brand, which I understand could create a really good dynamic going into Bound for Glory. Maybe they throw everything at it. Maybe TNA goes into full-blown turmoil. It ends up in a full-blown war. Obviously, at time of recording, NXT is tonight. What would be really interesting is TNA did what NXT did in the past and do a full-blown takeover, destroy the entire set, fully take it over and be like, no, we're not having this. That would then make a really good storyline. I'm just not convinced that that's what they're going to do. Which is why I'm a bit more negative on it, maybe. Because I feel like it would have made a lot more sense to have it just be, okay, we're going to do a full-blown takeover, brilliant. But that's just, I just don't believe that's what they're going to do. So for me, I don't mind this whole crossover winning titles, but TNA have to win something.
Yeah, I think it's. I think those points you've made are valid. I certainly won't dismiss any of them at all because again, it's when it's a company coming in, and we did a video back in the day when TNA and WWE sort of announced this partnership that we were a bit apprehensive as in is this going to cause not necessarily the death of TNA, but maybe like a dwindling of the momentum that they've sort of built up over the past couple of years, especially since obviously like the COVID era, and obviously what that did to a lot of wrestling companies. But I think that there is value in what they're doing as long as they do it in the right way. Like you say, I think if you build to this big moment where they get those titles back and it sort of sets up the next big champion for TNA, and obviously whatever storylines they are going forward, I think it'll work quite well. I think that potentially, I looking at it and seeing obviously both of the main titles being with WWE guys, it kind of made me think, are we going to get like a sort of invasion angle or invasion sort of like PLE similar, like maybe like the NXT, like obviously their sort of their PLE specials or TNA specials. You could have their sort of, I guess what the under the Vince era of Survivor Series used to be when it was Raw versus SmackDown, but this time you are actually getting two different companies taking on each other, and there is actually going to be a genuine winner out of all of it, which throws up more questions as to how do you book that and how do you make that work. But again, I guess that's for greater minds than mine to think about. But I do understand the caution and I understand the apprehension of everybody, and of course yourself, Bragster. But I do think in terms of TNA in the especially in the short term, it's obviously putting a lot more eyes on the product and a lot more eyes on them because you're getting that rub obviously from WWE and from some of the up and comers that are being involved. Of course, you've got former WWE guys in there, like your Dolph Ziggler's or Nemeth as Nick Nemeth as you would call him, and like the Hardy Boys and people like that. You've got former WWE guys in there, so that combined with the title sort of being held hostage, not that I would say necessarily that's what's happening, but obviously they can use that in storyline. I think that sort of surprise element to it, I guess, because everyone expects when there is like maybe intercompany matches that it just the belt just naturally stays there. And I think for someone like WWE and TNA to do that probably will generate more eyes. I think obviously they have to stick the landing in terms of either those titles going back or whatever storyline comes along, because I feel like there's got to be more of a storyline than they've just got the belts now and that's it. Like it feels like there's going to be more to it. We'll see obviously if that's the case, but I feel like in the short term it's going to bring more eyeballs and it's obviously going to generate more business for TNA, and I think it'll be a good thing for them in the short term. And as long as they don't do anything silly that could like damage either the wrestlers that they've got or obviously the titles themselves, I think that should hold TNA in good stead. I mean, I think one of the positive things that came out of the show on Sunday was AJ Styles returning to TNA and putting over Slater.
Brilliant.
Him doing that, I know there was reports of him doing other things on the show, but I think him coming into his old stomping ground and obviously him being as emotional as he was and then putting over this young talent that everyone can see is going to be a star one day, and if he's not already on the way there now. But like there are a lot of different things that TNA can benefit from, and WWE can benefit from, obviously vice versa, because a lot of TNA talent will probably be thinking, I do want to end up in WWE one day, and this partnership probably facilitates that. And maybe some talent that's fallen by the wayside at NXT or on the main roster could go to TNA and sort of rebuild themselves and keeps them in that bubble, as it were. Like Indy Hartwell being an example, obviously, who was on the card on Sunday. So, yeah, I think that whilst I understand the apprehension, I do think that there is a very good opportunity there for them to make the most of this and really get something out of it on both sides of the equation. But I think, especially with TNA, when we look back, like that late 2010s era and the early 2020s, where they did struggle to generate really any sort of major buzz, I think they're now in this period, obviously with Joe Hendry with his title reign and everything that's come with that, and then Jordan Grace, and then you're moving on into this next era. It's kind of like, if they stick the landing on it, for me personally, I think it can be a positive thing, but obviously time will tell.
No, yeah, definitely. I really like the idea of an invasion / Survivor Series type PLE, because what you can do at that event is you can do maybe some maybe 5-on-5, 4-on-4 elimination matches, which are always fun. But what you could also do is you almost, rather than just doing this versus this, but because WWE guys hold the titles, you could do a TNA guy challenges for the NXT Championship. You can do a TNA guy challenges for the TNA World Championship. A TNA woman challenges for the Knockouts title. Another TNA challenges for the NXT Women's title. Because then what you can have is all on the same show. You really won't know who wins because you're like, well, it's not out of the realms of possibility for TNA to take one of the NXT titles with them.
Yeah.
Then it's not out of the realms of possibility for WWE to keep one of the TNA titles. It doesn't necessarily mean the TNA will win all those titles back. Yeah. And it can create some really, you could almost do an Ultimate X match where 3 of them are WWE guys, 3 of them are TNA guys, all for the X Division title or something. Again, a great opportunity for WWE guys to compete in a match that doesn't happen in WWE. And again, that would then, if that's on like a WWE event, a WWE / TNA event, but is on maybe Netflix, it can put a lot of eyes on TNA by going, that Ultimate X match is really cool. And then they'll be like, oh, that's TNA's match. Okay, I might check out their stuff. Like, they do some really cool things. Yeah. I think that could work really well. If they go down that route where it ends in this big culminating event, I'm not saying that should be the end of the partnership, but in the end of maybe this full-blown domination maybe of NXT, where it ends up as you've got this big event of, okay, we're coming for you, and and we've got all of these different types of matches. Yeah. And you maybe have a WWE style match, that's maybe like unique to WWE, and so then TNA guys get a chance to compete in that style of match. I think that'd be really cool. Obviously, it's not as easy as that, but I think that would therefore put over TNA even more than obviously it already has. Yeah. But I think that would have a lasting image, a lasting effect, because it's on Netflix, because it's doing all these different things. I think then I think you would then move eyes to TNA. I know TNA are very close to getting a TV deal, which means that they can broadcast live 52 weeks a year, which will be really cool for them. And again, would obviously generate a lot of money for the company. Yeah. More so than what they're getting now. And again, so I know a lot of it is positive. As you said, if they stick the landing, this can work. I really thought that TNA were going to get one back. I really thought that was going to be the case in the terms of it's even now. Either Jayne wins earlier on, but TNA get the world title back, or vice versa. I really thought that one of the two was going to happen, where you end up being like, well, we've got one. Yeah. And then as that sort of almost lends itself almost easier to an invasion style. Yeah. PLE. Whereas obviously now it's all on TNA to come together. And if that's what happens, is TNA come together, they become a solid unit just to take back those titles, would be really cool and generate a lot of hype online. Because at the end of the day, this relationship is working. That is a categorical fact.
Yeah.
You can tell that by everything that's going on. I mean, Leon Slater getting that rub is huge. To have, I mean, we're probably biased because he is a Brit.
Yeah.
But like I've seen Leon Slater live quite a few times over the past year, and he's one of the most impressive people. He's also really nice. That's also something else about Leon. He's really nice. But to have over the past years seeing him multiple times, especially, and just being like, wow, then TNA noticing that and making him a star is just amazing. You know, it for people who aren't familiar with TNA, him beating Moose is such a big deal because Moose is like their biggest star.
Yeah.
Like you like people will think Joe Hendry is the star of TNA. What they don't realize is that Moose is one of the biggest stars.
Mm-hmm.
When AEW were having their crossover, it was Moose that was the guy that was part of that crossover. Moose is a huge deal. So for Leon to beat him and then the AJ Styles element, that like Leon's now going to become one of the biggest people in wrestling.
Yeah.
As he should be, because he's so impressive at his young age.
Yeah.
So for me, it's categorically working.
Yeah.
That is a full-blown fact. Anyone that says otherwise is stupid. I just, for me, I really felt that was going to be the moment where they get one back. I mean, obviously, we'll see the reaction going forwards of the TNA brand as a whole. But I think having both titles, what I don't want to see is that it's just a full-blown, like, okay, storylines carry on. I feel like having both titles should be the kick up the backside for TNA in terms of storyline-wise, to be like, right, we're going to get these back.
Yeah.
And you get some really cool moments where you have people who have been in rivalries for the past few years, people who clearly don't get on, coming together, becoming a unit to take down WWE from those titles. Would be really cool. As you said, like that sort of PLE would just be incredible and would be one I'd watch in an instant, especially if you give, I would say a must on that show would be like an Ultimate X style match, because I think something so unique that's such a good match would really help eyes on the TNA product.
Yeah.
More than I think people realize.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess my final point on it all is one of my favorite memories, or one of my more favorite memories of Survivor Series recently, of the past sort of 10 years, was when NXT were in that men's match and you had Keith Lee have such a great performance and looked like he was going to beat Roman, who was still the golden goose under Vince's eyes at that point, and put in such a performance that he got put up to the main roster, and it made him a star that day. Now, obviously, the aftermath of it all is another conversation, and we can go into that another time, but moments like that really do make people's careers and can really project them onto the next level.
Well,
and I
people
feel
forget
like
that he pinned Seth.
Yeah.
In that match, like people forget that, but that then contributed to people believing he would beat Roman, and as you said, then made him a star.
Yeah, exactly. But then a lot of people, well, I don't know if people forget. People will probably forget it more so now because he's been a long-term champion. But Gunther was out in the first couple of minutes, like it was almost instant. So like, you know, just because these things happen doesn't mean that people don't go have good careers. And I just feel like that sort of setup, or that sort of pay-per-view where you have these matches pitting them against each other, I think makes a lot of sense. And again, we didn't really get it properly with that invasion of NXT, and I feel like they really missed an opportunity when it was the proper Finn Balor, Samoa Joe, Black and Gold era to have like a full-on invasion of the main roster with them. But again, I still think with the characters you've got on TNA versus what we've got on NXT at the moment, you could do something really special. And it could project people who are maybe have been in NXT or TNA for a very long time and maybe get them a push onto the next level, whether it's on the main roster there or maybe a big championship push on the brands that they're on respectively. So I think there's a lot of great opportunities to come. Still a couple of concerns in terms of I'd like to see TNA, like you say, get a title back, whether it's one of the big ones or they go get something from NXT and sort of have that backwards and forwards a little bit. But we'll have to wait and see, of course, on that one. But with that being said, folks, let us know what you think in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the current battle going on between NXT and TNA and whether you think it's a good thing for TNA and wrestling as a whole. But of course, if you want to see more wrestling content, hit that subscribe button and we'll see you on the next one where, of course, we'll be talking even more wrestling. Thanks for watching, folks, and we'll see you soon.